Hey everyone, did you know that over 3 billion people live in rural areas worldwide? Well, welcome economics students to this explainer. Let's just dive right into this essential revision guide on the basic problems of the rural economy. Whether you're prepping for a massive final exam or you're just trying to wrap your head around how rural economies actually function in the real world, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to break these concepts down, make them incredibly simple, and most importantly, easy to remember. So, here's our game plan for today. We'll start with our Rural Economy Revision Guide framework, move into Pillar 1, Understanding Poverty, then Pillar 2, Decoding Unemployment, hit Pillar 3, Migration Dynamics, and finally, wrap it up with tying the cycle together. All right, Section 1, Rural Economy Revision Guide. Let's get our framework set up. The absolute most crucial point to take away today is that to master rural economics for your exams, you've got to understand these three fundamental, deeply interconnected pillars: poverty, unemployment, and migration. You see, they aren't just isolated chapters in a textbook. They're actually the gears driving the entire rural machine. And if one of those gears gets stuck, well, the whole system breaks down. Moving right along to Section 2, Pillar 1, Understanding Poverty. This is really the baseline struggle for so many rural areas. If an exam question asks you for a strict definition, simply remember it as the absolute inability to secure the bare minimum requirements for survival. We are not talking about having to skip a summer vacation here. We're talking about not having enough food to eat, lacking basic clothes to wear, or literally not having a roof over your head. Now, you definitely want to remember this comparison because I guarantee it shows up all the time. Absolute poverty is about literal survival, meaning you simply cannot afford a basic bowl of rice. Relative poverty, on the other hand, is all about inequality compared to the societal average. Like, imagine you have enough food and a modest house. You're surviving, but compared to your neighbor who's flexing a massive farm and 3 brand new tractors, well, you are relatively poor. So absolute is about basic needs, relative is about the wealth gap. You'll also need to distinguish between chronic and transient poverty, which is totally based on time. Chronic poverty lasts for generations. It's persistent, it's long-term, and a family just cannot seem to break the cycle. Transient poverty is, well, temporary. Think of a farmer who generally does pretty well, but a massive drought completely ruins the harvest this one year. For a few months, they fall into poverty, but they'll bounce back next season. A super easy way to remember this for your test: chronic is constant, transient is temporary. If you ever need to identify poverty out in the real world, the symptoms essentially, you're looking for low income, a distinct lack of basic education, poor health, and zero access to clean drinking water. In places like India, a very clear administrative indicator is actually seeing families holding below poverty line or BPL cards just to get government assistance. Notice how we're shifting from the symptoms to the disease here. These are your root causes. Factors like low agricultural productivity, meaning the land just isn't yielding enough crops, combined with rapid population growth, directly trigger poverty. Throw in a lack of capital, meaning there's literally no money to buy seeds or tools, or maybe a sudden natural disaster like a massive flood, and you've got a perfect recipe for severe economic hardship. And the effects, they are absolutely devastating. Poverty breeds malnutrition, hunger, and poor health, but it also forces really desperate choices. In fact, studies frequently show that severe drops in agricultural yields mathematically tie directly to spikes in local property crime. People will do whatever they have to just to survive. Vulnerable populations get pushed into terrible situations like child labor. And on a macro level, it completely tanks overall economic growth and deepens social inequality. Okay, let's jump to Section 3, Pillar 2, Decoding Unemployment. Let's figure out how a lack of work totally complicates the rural economy. Pay really close attention here, guys. The absolute key phrase to memorize is willing to work. If someone doesn't want a job, let's say they're a full-time student who isn't looking for work, they aren't technically unemployed in the eyes of economics. Unemployment strictly means you are actively raising your hand for a job, but there simply isn't one available for you. Which brings us to the types of unemployment. This is a guaranteed exam topic, so let's make it simple. Seasonal means you only work during harvest time. Structural means your skills just don't match the new jobs that are available. Frictional is that brief temporary gap when you're moving between 2 jobs. Educated means you have a fancy degree, but still no job. But look at disguised unemployment. This one is tricky. Imagine a farm that only needs 3 workers to harvest the crops, but 5 family members are out there working the field. Those 2 extra workers, they aren't actually adding to the total output. They look employed, but their labor is technically unnecessary. That right there is disguised unemployment. And notice how the heavy reliance on seasonal agriculture, coupled with a severe lack of factories or industrialization in rural areas, naturally leads to way fewer available jobs year-round. When the population grows rapidly, but economic growth is dragging, and there are absolutely zero factories to absorb those extra workers, yeah, unemployment skyrockets. So, the crucial takeaway is that unemployment doesn't just lower living standards, it actively increases poverty and causes what economists call a brain drain. Brain drain is when the smartest, most capable people look around, realize there are no jobs at home, and just pack up and move abroad, taking all their potential right with them. Over time, that kind of deep frustration can even lead to major political instability. On to Section 4, Pillar 3, Migration Dynamics. This essentially acts as the rural population's escape valve. Let me ask you this. When there are no jobs, the population is booming, and absolute poverty is incredibly high, what is the only logical, rational choice left for a rural worker who's just trying to look out for their family? The choice is migration. It's the act of moving from one place to another purely in search of a better economic lifeline. While you can definitely have urban to urban or rural to rural migration, the most common type we see in developing economies, like India, is rural to urban. It's people leaving the village to find hope in the big city. In economics, we always look at this through the lens of push and pull factors. People are pushed out of their villages by natural disasters, absolute poverty, and literally zero employment. But at the same exact time, they are pulled toward the cities by the promise of better urban jobs, superior healthcare, and actual schools for their kids. But migration is a total double-edged sword. On the positive side, migrants often earn higher incomes, learn new skills, and send vital money, which we call remittances, back home to their villages. The negative effects, though, they are heavy. The villages lose their young, most capable workforce. Meanwhile, the cities become completely overcrowded, which leads to the development of slums, and families are painfully separated for months, sometimes years at a time. Finally, Section 5, tying the cycle together. Let's pull all our notes together to see the big picture. Because this right here is how you scored top marks on an essay question. Here's the cause and effect chain. It starts at step 1, a lack of jobs, maybe disguised or seasonal unemployment, hits the rural area. This leads straight into step 2, income plummets, causing severe poverty. And finally, step 3, that crushing poverty directly forces families to migrate to the cities out of pure basic necessity. For your exam, please remember that these aren't isolated concepts. They form a continuous loop that defines the entire rural economic struggle. If a government steps in and tries to stop migration without actually fixing rural unemployment first, it will fail. You simply cannot solve one pillar without addressing the roots of the others. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to really test your understanding of today's revision session. Think about this. If a brand new policy miraculously eliminated all rural unemployment tomorrow, creating thousands of local jobs, exactly how would that ripple out to reshape the landscape of poverty and city migration? Work through that chain reaction in your head, and if you can answer that, you have officially mastered the rural economy. Good luck with your studies, and keep questioning how the world works.